Good afternoon, vinyl community. This is DJ Reed looking at more vinyl records, and we're going to focus on 1964 on particularly one album, the Beatles Meet the Beatles album. And before I begin, I'd like to make an announcement. They've done a survey of the 2020, year 2020, and I guess it is official. There is a report out that for the sales of the most sales this year of a group, and I guess it's factual that the Beatles are the highest selling in sales for albums in 2020. They're number one. Isn't that amazing? They are number one in sales in 2020. They were number one in sales in 2010 with the Beatles' number one album. And recently we've had archives with the Abbey Road, and the sales of that probably have been totaled up. And as of 2020, the Beatles in sales are number one. Isn't that amazing? So here we have today 1964, and their first big release, Meet the Beatles, went to number one also in 1964. Here's one copy I'd like to show you, and this is the US copy on Apple. And you can see that plainly. Side 2 starts off with George's Don't Bother Me, Little Child, Till There Was You. And this album in the US is 5 times platinum. That means it sold almost 5 million copies in the US alone. Now I don't know the total sales worldwide, but in the US it sold a lot. Yeah, and here's the cover, and that cover looks familiar, doesn't it? That's pretty well like this one with the Beatles. With the Beatles is a little darker. That's the album we showed last program. Meet the Beatles, it's a little lighter in texture. And as you see the sign here, Gold Record Award by the RIAA. And so that's the US pressing. And now I'd like to show you a Canadian pressing of Meet the Beatles. Here's the Canadian pressing I have on the orange capital label, made in Canada. That's a Canadian pressing. Now I don't think Canada had a Capitol Records plant then. That is either an RCA pressing in Smith Falls or Columbia. I'm not too sure. This one gentleman on his YouTube channel knows all the pressings. I'm not that familiar with every pressing, but I believe it was probably produced at the RCA plant in Canada at that time. When we come to the Burgundy labels, and I showed a few of the Burgundy labels last time on Canadian pressing, that is a Capitol Records release in Mississauga, Ontario. Now this one is a Japanese pressing on Meet the Beatles on the Apple label. Isn't that Apple beautiful? The record is just absolutely stunning. This Japanese pressing I got, and I got this in Toronto, Ontario, a few years ago. And what's nice about this Japanese pressing, looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? Until you open up the inside of it, and it's a gatefold. Now a lot of it you can't read because it is in Japanese. Again, you got that famous picture of the Beatles there. And on this side you have a familiar picture, but it's a little different than normal. And if the Beatle fans back then collected Beatle bubblegum cards, those pictures would be part of the set of bubblegum cards of the Beatles that you could collect back then. And there's the back of the Japanese pressing. It's the wording and pictures are just stunning, and as you could tell by the record, it is very good. And here's the last one today. This is again a Japanese pressing, only this is a single jacket, it's not the double. But this one is worth more money because it has the Obi Strip here, along here. When you collect the Obi Strip, it's worth more money to keep that strip. So if you lose the strip, it's not worth as much. If you got that Obi Strip, that's the best. And you see the pressing on that with the Beatles, and it's just a beautiful record. And this is mainly just Japanese print there, but it's the same album. And this pressing is just stunning. It's more of a flexible record. See how you can, it's more flexible. It's not as thick. So I think this pressing was done during the Dynaflex days, but I could be wrong on that. Again, it's just in mint condition. So that's my show today. I just wanted to go through the Meet the Beatles album. It's a very important album. As one of my listeners has said, 1963 was one of these turning points. Either the Beatles were going to make it or break it. After the Please Please Me album, it was a big gamble, putting the Beatles' own songs on the record, for one thing. Most of the Beatles songs were, for the first time, released with their own compositions. So that was, you know, not too many would do that. And the Beatles were pioneers. I mean their songs are historic now, but back then it was a risk. And they have a few covers, but mainly their own material. And again, on Meet the Beatles is the same thing. Most of their songs are written by them. George Harrison has the song Don't Bother Me. That was not his very first composition, but that was his most famous early song. And George Harrison's fans just love that. The song Don't Bother Me, because it has Ringo Starr playing an African drum on it. You'll hear on the song this on the beat, and it's an African drum. And there were other world instruments put on that record, that song, and it's good to know that, because George Harrison would become this world-renowned musician, and not only with the guitar but with the sitar. And by the middle year of 1965, George Harrison puts the guitar down and starts listening to and playing the sitar, as he was taught by this Indian musician, world-renowned musician by the name of Ravi Shankar. And but this would start the Beatles launching out into more world music. And then with John Lennon, you see he started to branch out with Bob Dylan. The Bob Dylan influence in the folk music, like You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. That's a big John Lennon song, and it's influenced by Bob Dylan. So as we go along, we'll see this progression of the Beatles from the early days when they were just green, really. And it was Brian Epstein, their manager, that got the new clothes, the new look, the Beatles look, and got them refined. And then George Martin began, a classically trained producer, sacrificed his classical music career for this little group who were very rough in the beginning days. But George was like, as Paul McCartney said recently, George Martin was like their dad, their father figure, and he would settle them down and train them into hitting the right notes and getting the right sound for their musicianship, and the right sound for their singing and their harmonies. And we know some of the Beatles' best songs are their harmonies. Like the song Yes It Is in 1965, and just recently we looked at This Boy, the B-side of I Want to Hold Your Hand. Now This Boy, the harmonies on that are unbelievable. I mean, it's one of their best vocals ever. And then Abbey Road with the song Because, that was a big harmony song too, and they're beautiful. But George Martin would take the time to settle the Beatles down and refine them. And with this refinement, we find this constant progression from one step, and then it was upward, upward, upward. And we'll see, that's why I want to begin these programs with the Beatles in the early days, because it will progress into something great, greater and greater, and their fame would be greater and greater. So that's our show today, and I hope you enjoyed it. And next time we'll progress into the later stages of 1964. Thanks again for watching, and stay safe, and we'll see you very soon. From DJ Reed, bye for now.